my dad passed away about a year ago, and so one of the cool things about the fat for me is seeing couples get out and adventure together, dads and their kids get out and adventure together, just like my dad and I did. And we don't get to do that anymore, but these guys are a father-son crew, and not only are they a really cool father-son crew, but this is the first quadriplegic to finish the entire fat. So would love for them to come on up and tell you guys a little bit about their fat experience. We're just going to keep having fun with that, okay? So fat, whatever, These guys are handsome, skinny dudes. I'm not so much, so I embody it. So I'll just give you guys a few minutes to tell them about your fat experience, and then at the end I'll hang out and answer the questions that you guys have.
Well, first of all, thank you to John.
Oh, yeah, man.
Awesome. Yeah, it was a year ago.
Yeah, we met here, yeah.
We met here and we heard about it. That night we said, we're doing the fat. We put it on our bucket list. We don't know how we're going to do it. We're going to do it.
Yeah, and then, the idea was officially born here last year. Our friend group, we decided to, let's plan and do this. Long story short, my father and I were the only two out of the group to do the whole thing. Other people, commitments, life, work, sick kids, stuff gets in the way. So they did sections of it. But yeah, my father and I did the whole thing. We did it over 3 stages. So like John was saying, it's hard to commit to that much time consecutively. We broke it up into Osceola and Ocala. We called stage 1 or Fat 1. Fat 2 was basically Richland up to Shired Island. So Richland, Croom, Citrus, Gothi to Shired. That was kind of Fat 2. And then Fat 3 was Shired North, so basically Big Bend and Apalachicola, Eglin to Blackwater. So those were kind of the 3 legs that we did it in. I tried to plan it over where we have like a long weekend, because a lot of people work, kids. That extra day to have off makes it a lot easier. And then we did one group over Christmas break, between Christmas and New Year's. The other 2 were also on a long weekend, and it only required people missing 2 Fridays. So I told them, if you can get 2 Fridays off of work and school, if you can commit to that, you have time to do the whole thing, if you do it over a long weekend. So we did a lot of logistics planning with it to make it work for like a bigger group, because as you know, more people, harder to claim, harder to organize and everything. But no, it was a great experience. So the first day, I won't bore you with the whole trip, but the first day was probably the craziest or most adventurous. So we started with 4 vehicles at Swanee Campground. We called that Night Zero. So we would get to camp the day before we started. That way we can get up and go. We're not waiting, I'm running 2 hours behind to start the trail. So we all got there the night before. Day 1, started 4 vehicles. One of them was an Audi all-wheel drive. That's real capable in the sand, but Osceola was deep, real deep water.
Yeah, this time of the year, Osceola is just like a pond, basically. So that was probably a little bit of an experience for you guys.
So I had water. I've got a Bronco on 35s. I had water like over the wheels and splash up over the hood and some deep crossings. You go down in. But Osceola is like a hard bottom. But so that was one vehicle down fairly quick. And then an hour or 2 later, my friend with a Jeep on 37s, his daughter got really sick. So they had to turn back. So now we're down to 2 vehicles. Finish it up, didn't really have any issues or get stuck or anything. Get into camp kind of late. Super long story short, wake up the next morning and we discovered 6 abandoned animals. There was 3 dogs, German Shepherds in like little kennels, and then there's a tent, and in the tent had 3 cats. My friend's fiance found the cats because we just saw the dogs outside and thought the owners weren't there, the car wasn't there, whatever. Anyways, we got animal control out there, rescued everything, but long story short, we rescued a little kitten. And because there was 2 cats in a cage in the tent, and there's a kitten that was just walking around. So my friend's fiance went in, and that's when she came out, and she's like, oh my God, there's a kitten in there. I had to put my cat down about 3 months prior to that, and this cat was about 3 months old. She's like, oh, you should adopt it. I'm like, let's just figure out what's going on here. So take the kitten.
We're on an off-road trip.
Yeah, I'm like, we're 2 vehicles down, so I'm like, take the kitten in his tent. He'll be safe and warm. I'm like, let's just figure the rest of this out. They go into town. There's no cell signal. They go into town, call Forest Service, Animal Control. They come out eventually. And I'm thinking this is like New Year's Eve weekend, so I'm like, no one's going to come out. We're in the middle of nowhere. It's cold. It's a holiday weekend. But they were good guys. They came out, got the other animals, and when they went into town, they bought a little cage and cat food. And like, yeah, we assumed you were just going to take it. So we rescued the cat, and we named him Ocala. So when they were gone, I was thinking, I'm like, when I kind of like, yeah, maybe we should rescue. It'd be kind of a cool story on the fat. camping, overlanding cat. It's kind of a cool story. So I started thinking like, oh, what would be a good name? And I'm like, we're in Ocala.
Ocala.
So we have Ocala, the overlanding cat. So the next day, or later that day, the day 2, so the second full day on the fat, we did all of Ocala Forest with Ocala the cat in my truck with him, and we're all bouncing around. So so we started with 4 vehicles, ended up with 2, ended up with the cat, and that was just the first day.
That's awesome.
But no, every section was super fun. Like, so that one was like the adventurous, what can go wrong, will go wrong, craziness. Section 2 was just Dad and I, and that was cool just to have our time together. And then section 3 was with a couple other friends. The vehicles that couldn't do the whole thing would still meet us and camp a night, so they'd still be part of it. So again, if you have friends that like, oh, well, I only have a Subaru, I can't do, they could do a good chunk of it, and you could just, don't go to Richland or don't go to Osceola, but they could still meet you and camp along the way. So we had friends did that. But then Fat 3 was cool because we ran it with a friend that we met at Expo here last year. He ended up camping beside us. Ended up hanging out with him, really cool guy. We stayed in touch, and he was here when we had the idea, like, let's run the Fat. So I'm like, hey, I know you're in South Carolina, but you're welcome to come down and do it. So he came down and did the last leg with us. So that was kind of fun, a different, somebody I hadn't seen for a year, kind of like a new friend, an Expo friend. And then we just meet cool people along the way. Just a lot of good experiences, and it's
What was your favorite? I want to hear from both.
Sure.
What was your favorite campsite on the Fat?
I got to say Shired Island.
Yeah.
I had been there before running the Fat, but I learned about it through John and from the Fat. So that Shired's cool. It's a special place. We had good weather. Like, we went there a year ago and camped for 2 nights. The first day was like a Corona ad, sunny, just beautiful, beach day, perfect. The next day, the temperature dropped to like low 50s, high 40s, but super windy, like really hard wind, and it made it feel really cold, but it was kind of a cool experience. And then when we went back this year, we actually got to go to Shire twice because we ran Fat 2 backwards. So we were running the whole thing from east to west, and then we did leg 2 backwards because Shire was our like cutoff point. So we went from Shire to Rich Loam, and then leg 3 we went from Shire up to the Panhandle. So that gave us an extra night at Shire. So we did it that way because that's my favorite camp spot.
So quick thing on Shire before I ask you. So Shire Island right now, if you Google Shire Island, it says that it's closed. It's not closed. So we partner with Dixie County. Visit Dixie.com. You can go on there and check them out. They say that it's closed right now because the power hookups aren't there. The bathrooms aren't there's nothing there, which I like.
I do too. It's better now.
Yeah, it might be better now, but that's why it says that it's closed. But you're still absolutely allowed to camp there. You do need to be prepared to have a $10 bill with you per night that you're staying. So it's $10 per vehicle. And there's a gentleman who I can confirm works for Dixie County, but refuses. Some of you guys know this story that have heard this whole thing before. He refuses to wear a uniform. And so just first thing in the morning, this guy in a beat-up pickup truck and a wife beater shows up, and all he'll say, the first time I met him was like 4 years ago. It's like 6 a.m. and he pulls up, and he has a red binder, and he goes, "Money." And I was like, I'm not about to get hustled by some, local at this campsite. And I said, I thought it was free to camp here. He's like, no, it's $10. He's like, I've been collecting money here for 30 years. You're not about to talk me out of it. And I was like, well, there's no signs or anything. He goes, did you see the tree when you came in? I said, yeah, I saw a tree. He goes, there's a sign. I go over this oak tree, beautiful, huge oak tree. And no lie, 40 feet up in the air is this little stupid sign. So I reach out to Dixie County when we started working together, and I'm like, listen, what's the story with the guy collecting money? And I forget what his name is, we'll call him Ted. They're like, oh, that's just Ted. And I said, well, he was just wearing a wife beater and was smoking a cigar at 5 in the morning, and all he said to me was, money. And they're like, yeah, he's an odd guy, and he refuses to wear a uniform. So he's legit. He looks unlegit, but he's legit.
So 30 years ago, he put the sign on the tree.
The tree grew. You're probably right. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, I mean, it was the funniest thing. So I always tell people, if you're going to Shire Island, just bring a tent spot with you because this guy's going to show up. He's got a rifle rack in the back with rifles. It is a whole thing. And I'm like, dude, I'm strapped too. What's that going? But it was so funny, man. It was such a funny experience. So be aware of that when you go to Shire. They are open. You can camp there. There's just no hookups, no bathrooms, nothing. All right, your favorite campsite?
Hurricane Lake.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hurricane Lake's the last stop for us. So I think it was the beauty of the place and just the accomplishment.
Yeah, getting there.
It's like
yeah.
a nice reward. You guys probably saw in the film that little like peninsula that juts out.
Yeah.
Like that's like the finish line. That's a good metaphorical finish line. And then
Yeah.
it's beautiful there because you get a full view of the lake and camp
Yeah,
spot.
yeah.
Like we definitely want to plan a trip to go back there.
Yeah, so you can run the fat west to east or east to west. I recommend running it east to west. Like start on the east side, run it south, loop back north, and then go west. The last campsite that you can camp at in Osceola is fine. It's called Sandhill Hunt Camp. It's fine, but like the reward, like you said, of starting on the East Coast and pumping for 6, 7, 8 days. And when you get to Hurricane Lake, I promise you, it's like a goose. That campsite is a goosebump campsite. Like that's the way we talk about it in our group. Is sometimes you go camp somewhere and you pull in and you're like, I can't believe we get to camp here. It's just such a cool spot. And there's this peninsula that juts out from the campsites, and there's a single sycamore tree that's beautiful that's at the very end. There's a little bench there, and it's just like, I don't know, it's like chef's kiss. You get to the end of the thing. So I definitely recommend running it east to west. You can do it any which way you want, but definitely check that out. Would you guys mind giving you guys a round of applause? I keep saying wrong. Sons of Liberty. There you go. I keep wanting to say Sons of Anarchy, but
That's the other one.
Find them on YouTube, on Instagram. Make sure that you subscribe to them, and directly